to our first ever interview on the Forest School Loo channel. So I apologise in advance for my very novice interviewing techniques, but I'm very, very pleased to welcome Nic Harding from the Forest School Association, who we're going to have a nice conversation about growing a forest school. So,
hi, Lou.
Thank you, Nic, for joining us today. And how exciting, you're going to be the first person we talk to on the channel.
Oh, brilliant.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Forest School Association?
Yeah, sure, Lou. Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's really, really special to be the first one to be interviewed as well. That's really lovely. So, as you said, my name's Nic, and I'm projects officer for the Forest School Association, or the FSA for short. So my job is to work on the projects behind the scenes, the ones that people don't see until they arrive on a shelf or, kind of arrive on the public eye. I'm busy tinkering away and making sure they happen in the background. I joined the Forest School Association 2.5 years ago, something like that. It's been great. It's great fun. And so many amazing people. I thought I knew about Forest School before I started working here. And then I've met people like yourself and Lily and John Cree, and it's just amazing to have so many brains with so much information, and me be able to sit here and pick away at it until I've got a nice little nest egg of stuff that I can use when I go back to my delivery. The Forest School Association is the professional body for forest school in the UK, and we protect and promote the 6 principles of forest school, which predate the Forest School Association. Actually, they were created in, I think, 2012 by the forest school community, and they put them together to draw a line around what forest school is and isn't. And the FSA, we benchmark those and make sure that people understand what forest school is, to make sure that the provision that gets passed about in the UK is of kind of decent quality. But on top of that, we also kind of support our members. We support the local community. We do all sorts of events and activities. We have an annual conference, which I think it was 350 people attended this year. And there was something like 45 workshops on all sorts of different subjects, some of which might appear in the book, some of which don't. And we also have monthly webinars, our Wednesday webinars, which have been fantastic. We've covered topics from kind of physically looking after your site to the kind of more theoretical based stuff on somatic therapy and the vagus. And we've also covered stuff on things like choice theory, which is William Glass's theory. So they're really, really good to get into, and they're free for people to access, and you don't have to be a member either to do that. So they're kind of open source to everybody. Useful stuff. But of course, the other side of that is that we get to learn from our members what's going on from them. So there's a two-way street with the FSA, where we might be giving out information and support. We're also finding stuff out about what's happening with our community and kind of everybody in it. And it's really important to have that kind of going on.
I'm sorry, I have to just add in there, if you're hearing screams in the background, that's just Lily Rowe playing with Nanny and Grandad. Don't worry, there's no massacre occurring in the background. Thank you, Nic. It sounds like there's a lot going on there, and a rich resource for forest school practitioners, and great to hear that it's a two-way thing. After all, forest school is a grassroots movement, right? It's come from people wanting to do forest school. and thinking that that's a positive thing for children, young people, and adults, everybody.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, we within the book, there's loads of case studies, and looking at the diversity of delivery from tiny little twiddlies, the early years kids, all the way up to kind of adults in care homes, some of which may or may not have dementia and other kind of life problems, but they're all benefiting from Forest School, and it has such a massive impact on people. It's wonderful. You know, I trained in 2003, 2004, and all of the people that have come through Forest School with me, or I've had the privilege of watching go through Forest School, have always come out with something. You know, some of them leave having had life-changing epiphanies, and some of us leave just feeling a bit more confident, a bit more sure about ourselves, and kind of where we fit within the world. And even that is like crucially important. And to have that access to a natural space that you can come back to at times of trouble and strife and stress, to just be yourself and be part of the world. Magical, absolutely magical.
I often think it's a sign of the disconnected society that we live in, that there's something called Forest School that is required, or that is doing that. You know, after all, it's something that is our birthright. You know, everyone should have, as you say, time to sit and be. And the whole fact that there's a thing called Forest School, I memean, obviously knowing our channel, we are fully in support of Forest School, but in a weird way, it shouldn't exist. We shouldn't need to be having this conversation even, because it should be just automatic that people are having those experiences all through their life. I think it's a sign of our very sick society at the moment that we are here having this conversation. That it's not obvious that people aren't doing it all the time, you know.
It is bizarre, isn't it, that you kind of think maybe 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, how much more connection with the natural world we would have had, and how divorced we're becoming, and you know, kind of the need for Forest School is so much stronger now than it ever has been with the pandemic. That connection to nature and connection to the outdoors, and the healthiness of being able to be outdoors with a group of people is just so important. We're seeing it, you know, kind of being reported in all sorts of research now, and people are finally listening to the people like you and I that have been shouting about this for years and years and years. They're finally starting to listen, which is brilliant. And it's part of the reason why we started with the book. Obviously not the pandemic, but because people had started to listen to this wonderful song that we're singing, and people were jumping on board the Forest School train or boat, whichever you want to call it, but they were jumping on board the Forest School movement, and people were being lost along the way. And people were jumping on and not quite knowing what Forest School was, not quite knowing how to get it, not quite knowing how to access bits of it. So that's why we came up with the idea for the book. It's one of the reasons why we came up with the idea for the book. And it is, creating a Forest School is quite an organic process. It's one of those processes that step by step, but it's got that nice flow and humanity to it as well.
So that's interesting. You used the word organic, because that was a word I was going to ask you about, because we're framing this conversation as growing a Forest School, but that is also the name of the book. Do you want to hold up? Do you want to hold up the book so we can see it? A
shameless plug.
There we go. Shameless plug. Growing a Forest School from the roots up. I was just reflecting on the choice of words. They're growing a forest school, not like, planning a forest school or running a forest school, but growing one. It's a very organic, natural word. And forest school is a grassroots movement, as we've just said, but that organic process of every forest school program being unique, and perhaps working in a slightly different way with different people, with different sites, different leadership styles. Would you like to share anything about the choice of the title there? Why is it growing a forest school from the roots up?
I think for me, it's really strong imagery to say growing one. It feels very natural to say growing a forest school, and you've got to put the roots in. You've got to have that kind of grip to reality, that bit that makes it safe, that makes it secure, that gives people boundaries, that gives people that they know where they are. They're rooted in the ethos and the pedagogy of forest school, and then you've got this wonderful growth that can happen from that. And that can be a growth of a community. We've seen forest schools in places where the community is built up around the forest school. So people come together that wouldn't usually meet, from different walks of life, from kind of different backgrounds, and they come into this space that we create with this structure and roots and boundaries, and they grow into something else. And they don't have the boundaries you would get from an indoor club where you come and do basket weaving or spoon making or something like that, or they come into a space which is free and open and can grow in any direction. And I think that's kind of really important to kind of get across to kind of forest school leaders, is that forest school is going to grow with every leader in a different way. They're going to bring their own skills, their own personality, their own way of working onto that basis, that the principles and the ethos. And by doing that, they can create wonderful, just unique spaces for people to be in. And then the people that come will build on that, and they'll create a beautiful community for people to belong to. And hopefully, if that all works, that'll be done without kind of levels of judgment. Oh, my dogs are kicking off.
Hey, they're in agreement.
Yeah. It's also about things getting bigger from a small point. It's that in order to get to where we want to be, sometimes we've got to plant a seed. And it takes a little effort to plant that seed, but we have to let it grow. We have to nurture it. We have to water it. We have to look after it, and it has to be in the right place at the right time. So for me, it's like the chance of growth and everything all comes down to that one word, growing. And that's why I chose the title, Growing a Forest School from the Roots Up. It's just, and the people within there, they all grow. It's everybody's growing. It's a green-fingered thing. But it's a really, really important, organic, natural process. And if you allow a degree of play to come into that, even with your serious stuff, even with your business structures and your business planning, if you remember the fun aspect of it, then it will feel like you're growing something rather than that you're banging your head against a business wall. Let it be fun. Let the process be fun. Reflect on it. Take time to work through it. Be a bit forest school about how you set up your business. We reflect on our sessions. We reflect on our delivery and work out our strengths and places where we can possibly improve. But you can do that with your business. So it is constantly growing and becoming stronger and better and more resilient the more you do. So that's why Growing a forest school.
Growing a forest school. Yeah. Yeah. So whilst we're talking about the book, there are already quite a few books about forest school out in the marketplace, some very nice ones, some very groovy forest school books out there. So how is this book different to those?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's loads of stuff about forest school out there, and it's growing all the time, which is fantastic. This book is slightly different because there's lots of books that deal with the delivery of forest school and what you ought to be doing within a forest school session. So it tends to deal with the stuff around your training, you know, to help you support you through your training. This book's slightly different. What this book does is, first of all, it'll help you decide if forest school is what you want. And it'll do that by asking you some reflective questions and giving you information to reflect on. Once you've decided that forest school is for you, which hopefully you will, it'll help you get the most out of your training. So it's going to give you some grounding stuff. So when you arrive with your trainer, you know what you're talking about enough that your trainer can go on to more advanced things when they're doing their training and really kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of what it all means. So it's just that little appetite whet to get you honed and ready. And then it will outline the possibilities of how you can get hold of forest school. So there's 5 or 6 different options that we reckon that most forest school leaders have in order to get forest school in their lives, one way or another. It will help whether they're a freelance leader or looking to start a business, but it'll also help if they're maybe a head teacher of a school or part of the senior leadership team or a teacher in a school that wants to put forest school in place. Helps you reflect through those processes and build your project or build your business sustainably. One of the things we find with kind of some forest schools is that they run into problems, systematically run into problems. And over the last 9 years since the FSA was founded, we've been collecting the questions that people have asked us. And we've been collecting them and looking at the answers that we've had to give them. And the book covers all of those questions of all the problems that people have run into. So we're answering people's problems. Obviously, we don't go into names. We're not saying, oh, so-and-so had a problem. But we're allowing those solutions to come forward to stop people falling in the same trips and traps. So that's important because it can cost you an awful lot of money, time, effort, and stress getting yourself out of these problems. And actually, if you plan a little bit beforehand, you can prevent yourself from landing in those problems at all. And a lot of the time, the advice is, well, you're in that point now. You've reached that problem now. We can try and help. But if you know, 10 years ago when you started your forest school, if you'd planned this bit, you wouldn't be in this position now. So some of it we can help people a little bit, but the book helps people plan to prevent those problems in the first place, which is going to save them money and time and effort. It'll help you advocate for forest school. So if you're a teacher in a school and you've got hold of the book, it will help you build your ideas to sell to your senior leadership team. And it'll also tell you all about the benefits of forest school and how they work, how the principals work with children or the people doing it, the participants, I should say, rather than children, because it's all ages. So you can put those facts and figures across to your senior leadership team and tell them exactly what it does on the tin. And then you can build your system correct from the beginning or sustainable from the beginning. So you're not having people saying, oh, can you just chop that bit off? Because we don't think that the money stretches that far. If you've outlined that in the outset of your business case, that it needs to be long-term and it needs to be in a natural environment and it needs to be holistic and it needs to be slightly risky. You know, if you've outlined those things in your business case to begin with, it makes it more difficult for people to come along and chop a bit off. And the problem is, as they chop off, it becomes stuff that isn't forest school, and you get less and less and less return from it. And then people find it easier and easier and easier to chop little bits off until you're doing something completely different. And it might be massively valuable, but it's not forest school at that point. So the ability to advocate for what forest school is an important part of this book. It will help you build your business. So it'll help you plan your business. It'll help you look at maybe what business structure you might want to look at and help you reflect on that. It'll also help you manage your business, looking at the operational management of your business, looking at the financial management of your business, looking at forecasting cash flows. 90% of businesses in the UK fail because of cash flow issues. So cash flow is a massively important thing. And to be able to forecast your cash flow is a really, really useful tool. I'm talking about that because it's one of my chapters, but it's really important. And just like I was saying about people running into problems with their forest school, the cash flow forecast can help you, can prevent you running into financial problems within your business. So really important to kind of get that going from the outset and keeping records and everything. So that's really important. And then we also look a little bit at marketing. We look a little bit at sales, because we're providing a quality service when we're delivering forest school, or hopefully everybody is heading towards a quality service at forest school. And it's all about relationships. It's not about kind of the hard sell that you would see in a car showroom. But even within that sales within a car showroom, the biggest portion of that is building relationships. And one of the biggest strengths that all forest school leaders have is the ability to build strong relationships with people. So the book maybe will help you reflect on how to use those strengths that you have to build your marketing strategies, your sales strategies, and things like that to make your business move forward. There's lots of people out there that can advise you on sales and marketing and stuff, but the book will give you kind of like a step into that puddle, if you like. One of the biggest problems that people face on a delivery basis is about land use and land use agreements. And shaking hands with somebody and saying, "Oh, I'm coming to use your wood," is great, until it's not. You know, it's great while it works, but when it doesn't work, all of a sudden your entire business is sat on a handshake that has no legal binding. And so the creation of memorandums of understanding, land use agreements, or leases and licenses are really important. Sounds really dreary, but it could save your bacon at the end of the day, or your business. So we go into land use agreements, what's important, what they should contain, and kind of like to help people reflect on that. Site care, we've got a chapter there about site care that's written by Dawn Preston, who works for the wildlife trusts. So she knows her stuff. She's been working out in the outdoors for years and years and years. So she's giving us the benefit of her information, but through a forest school lens, because she's an indoors trainer with the FSA as well. So you've got the benefit of her being a trainer and also a land manager. So a great chapter. And then finally, we help you work out what equipment you might need by using, rather than telling you an equipment list, a way of looking at equipment. So there's a nice little exercise that you can do, reflective exercise in there, as to what equipment you might need, what equipment you might want but don't need. Because I've got a box full of equipment in there that I bought for forest school that's lovely and shiny and sharp and does wonderful things. But did I ever use it in my forest school delivery? Probably not. Maybe once or twice. And it cost a lot of money. and that can be a big outlay for businesses in the beginning. So to help you decide which bits of kit that you're going to use on a regular basis and you're going to get your money's worth out of. So there's a lovely little exercise in there in the parting chapters. And then the final one, which is one of the most important chapters in the book, I think, is a whole raft of resources that enable you to plant seeds for the future. And this is helping you look at all the things that connect to forest school that trainers can't fit into their sessions with you when you're doing your level 3 training. All those things that, trainers like yourself, Lou, because it's your chapter.
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, trainers like yourself have gleaned over the years. How long have you been doing forest school, Lou?
I trained as a practitioner probably around the same time as you, 2003. Okay. And been working as a trainer since 2007.
Well, you've got a background in environmental education and stuff anyway, haven't you?
Originally trained as an ecologist, yeah.
Yeah. So that really comes through in your chapter, and all the information that you've got from like the 8 Shields stuff with John Young's teachings, and all the way through, and then looking at some of the psychology behind forest school and the processes and things like choice theory and I'm trying to remember all those beautiful little kernels of knowledge.
So many groovy things, though.
Yeah, there is so many groovy things.
So many things.
I wonder if we can show a page or two, have a sneak preview.
Sneak preview.
So we've got all the way through the book. We've got these lovely reflective exercises that help you work out different aspects of forest school, and this is one from the final end of the book about working out kind of how forest school ripple effects through communities, but it's also helping you to see the wood for the trees and working out kind of your strengths and weaknesses as well, or strengths or areas for improvement. There's some lovely stuff about the 7 motifs of play, because of course play is a massively important part of forest school. And kind of we go into that in a bit of detail. There's a bit about working with behavior in that final chapter, and whether or not we should call it behavior. Is it not just communication of another sort? There's a bit about rewards and punishment in there, and kind of the facts that they're the same sides of, or they're opposite sides of the same coin. So that there's loads of stuff in that final chapter that is a springboard to get you moving off, to plant a seed for the future. So yeah, that's one of my favorite chapters, to be honest.
You have to say that because you're talking.
I've got to say that because but it is massively important, and I think kind of that the leadership principle, when we're talking about leaders being reflective, that process of being reflective and looking on our delivery and looking on what we can learn to help the people or support the people that are learning in the environment that we create with our forest school is so important. So important to keep up to date with that and to keep moving forward, and it helps us not become stale as leaders, because if you're going into the woods day in day out and you're delivering lots and lots of sessions and you're on your own doing it, or you've got a small work crew that you're working with, you and an assistant, or you and a couple of assistants, it can be quite a lonely thing and quite a difficult thing to focus on where you need to gain some advancement or some new ideas or new concepts, especially when you deal with particularly tricky clients. Kind of, I've run groups with forensic level behavior, and they were really, really tricky, challenging boys that were not the safest people to be around a lot of the time. I wouldn't like to meet them out in the street, But in forest school, they were, you know, they came on in leaps and bounds, and they were fascinating to work with. But I needed a bit of help and support. So, you know, kind of knowing where to go for that, and knowing that, you know, kind of choice theory can help, or understanding schema. These were 14, 15-year-old lads, and we were starting to see that had trauma all their lives. They'd had, you know, kind of difficult upbringings. And we started to see, as they relaxed into the sessions, things like early years schema, which you wouldn't expect from 14 or 15-year-old boys, but they were exploring the world for the first time because they were in an environment that they trusted and were comfortable to do so. So, you know, if you can get a 14 or 15-year-old lad that's on the wrong side of the law a lot of the time to start doing some early years schema and feel comfortable in that space, then that's a wonderful thing. So yeah, that helps us reach out to the new potential.
So I guess as well, this is where, as forest school leaders, forest school practitioners, it's important to find your tribe, you know, find a community where you can have conversations, where you can get support. Obviously the FSA is one vehicle for that, potentially, isn't it? As in, you can join the FSA. There's local groups as well. That
the local groups are fantastic. Yeah, local groups are absolutely brilliant. So I think, how many local groups have we got, Lou? Because you were in charge of them, weren't you, at one point?
Quite a few. It's all good. There's some people doing great work, all in their own time as well, you know, organizing networking events, skill sharing events, so that people can kind of come together in the woods. I guess there is also online opportunities as well.
Yeah, there is. And there's also, you can contact through to the FSA and get the benefit of all those endorsed trainers and our directors, all of which are forest school leaders. So we are an organisation made up of the community that we serve. There's only a few members of staff, or most of which have a lot of experience in forest school. So we're made up of the people that we serve, which is great, because we understand that double way communication then. But local groups are really important to keep us kind of, us as the national FSA, linked in with what's happening on the ground, but also kind of any kind of geographically based problems that are coming up, and also lots of events. There's local groups that host like first aid training, and then they give grants to people. To, I think it's the Essex group, isn't it, that have given grants to people to get them to their level 3 training, which is just amazing. You've got a local group supporting people into the industry, and doing that by supporting people within the industry to get the training that they need to carry on with what they're doing. It's a brilliant system, and it's lovely to talk to them as well. They're usually really friendly people, and it's the conference is a fantastic place to get together and network. I always think the workshops are brilliant, but a lot of the massive value that happens at the local conference, at the national conference, is the fact that you get to stand next to somebody that you wouldn't ordinarily get to meet in the dinner queue, or in sitting next to them in the marquee, and you have a chat for 5 minutes. And I've found that's where a lot of the value for me has come, those 5-minute conversations at the networking at the conference, and making connections all over the country, or from all over the world, because we had people from Spain, we've had people from Canada, Australia, coming to our national conference. So I'm not quite sure we can call it an international conference as yet, but it's getting there. It's got an international flavour, let's say. But that connection and communication between different forest school leaders is really important, and becoming part of that community is really important, because it can be a lonely thing being a forest school leader, especially if you're trying to set one up in an environment which isn't necessarily 100% supportive to what you're doing. So you might be in a school and you might be trying to push the idea of forest school uphill to the senior leadership team and advocate for it. That can be pretty daunting, and it can be pretty lonely. But reaching out into the forest school community, you can then get the qualitative and quantitative kind of research on that, and also just general stories of how forest school has affected people. And you know, kind of I worked with kids back in 2003 that are now adults with their own kids, and they come up to me in supermarkets and tell me how wonderful their life's been since they've been on forest school. And it's lovely for me. It's really lovely for me, but it's also kind of, it's the ethos and the pedagogy and what happens at forest school and what people bring and develop and grow into. So we get back to growing a forest school, but the people within the forest school are growing as well.
And talking about community, I suppose one of the reasons I started this channel on YouTube was to support the growth of community in terms of forest school. And that makes a nice segue into some of the people in our forest school community have asked some questions for us to discuss about growing a forest school. So which is a big thank you to it's another Nic, a big thank you to Nic and Neve, I think, who have sent through some questions. So we'll start with Nic. I think they've each asked 3 questions. So perhaps we'll go through them now, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So Nic asks, okay, which routes to go down? Sole trader, CIC, community interest company, or limited company? That's the first question. So that's about legal forms, how to set up your legal form.
So business structures, business types, business structures. It's a tricky thing. It's a really tricky thing. And without knowing the full ins and outs of what Nic wants to do, it's very difficult for me to advise which way that he should go. However, there are a few things that might be useful to reflect upon. Just bear with me a second. So sole trader, CIC, and limited companies, all of them have benefits and they all have drawbacks. This is covered in chapter 6 of the book, which is about kind of planning your forest school business, because this is a major part of what makes your business successful or makes it fail. Choosing the right structure, not to put any pressure on Nic, choosing which business structure he takes, but it can show the direction which you want to head in. So the benefits of being a sole trader, there's a lot less paperwork within your business. You're freer to move as a sole trader, so you can move more quickly and take advantage of business opportunities. Whereas as a limited company, you might be slightly slower to react because you have to go through a process because you're a company. So that's one of the benefits of being a sole trader. One of the drawbacks is that your business is you. So as a sole trader, you are responsible for any profits or losses that are incurred by your business. So you're not protected from any kind of litigation. If somebody was to sue you, for example, that would not just come out of your business money, that could also affect your home, your car, your personal assets. So that's kind of it's a big risk as a sole trader. There are tax implications. So as a sole trader, you pay income tax. As a limited company, you pay more tax, but you have more protection. So as a limited company, if you're limited by guarantee, you're limited by a certain amount of money. So people can only take what's the word I'm looking for? Restitution is not the right word. If something happens and they come after your company and they sue your company, they can only sue your company. They can't take money from you as an individual. So your house and your car and everything, as long as they're not owned by the company, are relatively safe. I say relatively because it's a really complex thing. So you need to do your own research and make sure where those boundaries are. But as a limited company, you can be slightly more protected. You do pay company-based tax though, which is a lot more than the income tax. However, how you get paid, there are ways that you can get paid, and there are ways that you can be paid by dividends from a company. So you need to look into that. It's such a huge topic, limited companies, that you'd need to go more into it if you were going to look at that. So we've kind of, within chapter 7, we've put out most of the advantages and disadvantages, but you really need to dig deep to work out whether it's worth that extra work setting up a company and making sure the setup's right. If you don't set it up right, then you can land yourself in bother, and you might get into a situation where you, as the founder, the member, can't be paid. So you've got to make sure that you do it right as a limited company. And then you've got limited companies that are limited by shares, so that they're not limited by guarantee, they're limited by shares. And then the third type of limited company is the CIC. So a CIC is a type of limited company. So it has all of the benefits of being a limited company. It has some of the downsides of being a limited company, in that there's lots of paperwork. But on top of that, it's also all of its benefits go towards the community. So they go, they benefit the community rather than shareholders. So it wouldn't have dividends. So you couldn't pay yourself through dividends from a CIC, as far as I know. You might find a way to do it. If you do, drop me a line, let me know. But as a CIC, you can access forms of funding because you are what's the word? I'm losing my words, Lou. I'm losing my words.
You have an
social
asset.
enterprise.
Oh, you have an asset lock, don't you, as
yes,
a CIC,
you do.
that prevents you from paying out, ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah.
So it's designed, isn't it, to protect?
Yeah.
Protect that. So you're seen as a more well, you're not for profit, but your assets are locked, and therefore you can access grants and funding often because of that.
Yeah. So that's kind of the importance of the CIC. Pardon me, is that you can access bits of funding because of this asset lock. So for Nic, really, what you need to reflect on is what direction your business is going to take. And you also need to know kind of how you're going to work with people that work with you. So if you're going to have employees, how do they fit with those structures? If you're a sole trader, you've also got partnerships as well. So that we deal with partnerships in there. But Nic didn't ask about partnerships. I've got to put them out there because there is partnerships as well. But work out how your business is going to work. And from that, one of these will step slightly more forward. So, if you've got a purely social agenda where you want to work with children and you are only really interested in making sure that there is a social and community benefit to what you do. So money is reinvested back into the company rather than paying shareholders or giving you dividends for working hard, then the CIC route is probably the way to go. If you're wanting to pay yourself by dividends, then you're going to have to go down the limited company route. And you need to look into payment by dividends. There's a bit of a balancing act to do between wages and paying by dividends. And it's a whole complicated thing, but it's worth looking into. There's more paperwork and it's tricky to set up. So it depends how confident you are at that level and what assistance you've got. Lots of local councils will give you assistance in setting up your business. And there's loads of stuff on the government website about all these different types of business structure. And if you want to be as free and easy as a business can be, and you're willing to take the risk for your house, your car, and everything you own, then sole trader is the route to go. So it's a balancing act, and it's really difficult. So I hope, Nic, that's been useful for you. And I'm sorry I can't just say, oh, this is a nice easy route for you. Also, it might be worth having a look at cooperatives as well, especially if you're working with a group of people. Look at cooperatives; they're quite interesting. We do mention them in the book. We don't go into a lot of detail about cooperatives because they're complicated. But if you're working with a group of people with a set goal, cooperatives might be the way to go for you. And they have a benefit a bit like a CIC and a bit like a limited company and a bit like, so that they kind of fit a completely different niche. And they're more community based, so they kind of feel a bit more forest schooly, but they can be very tricky to set up and very tricky to break down again if things go wrong. So yeah, that's the other side of it, is that sole traders, it's quite easy to break a sole trader business down. A limited company, it's less easy to break down, and you may have to, if you're limited by guarantee, you may have to have some sort of asset lock in place where you have to share what resources you've made with another company that's not related to you that's doing the same thing. And that might be the case with the CIC as well. So there's a lot to think about there and a lot to reflect on. So I hope that's been useful, Nic.
Thank you for that, Nic. Too many Nics. Whilst we're talking about the business, Nic asked something else as well on a different theme, but to do with Ofsted registration, which again is a common...
Nice, easy questions from Nic. No, they're not.
He's putting you through your paces today.
Yeah, definitely.
So he's asking when to go through Ofsted registration as a business, like right at the start, once you've established, or how do you navigate the exemption rules?
Gosh, okay, that's quite a tricky one. And again, the answer is it depends. It depends on how your business is structured, how it works, what you do, who you work with, how you work with them. So there's actually a flow chart that we have in our knowledge base at the Forest School Association, and it's about Ofsted regulation. So it's well worth going and having a look at that, and it helps you kind of go through piece by piece as to where and when you need to register. There are a few things that you've got to be aware of. You've got to be aware of those exemptions, sorry, not exclusions. So if your sessions are less than 2 hours, if your parents stay on site, and if you have less than 14 days contact with a group, they're the exemptions from registering for Ofsted. Now, if you're doing quality forest school, that can be a problem because sessions should be over 2 hours in length. And obviously, forest school is long term. So if you're running over a year with the same group of participants, then you may have to look at Ofsted registration at that point. You've also got what kind of Ofsted registration there is. So you've got the early years, you've got the compulsory childminder registration, and you've also got, childminder. I've got that in the brain. Childcare registration, and then you've got the voluntary registration as well, whether you voluntarily want to register with Ofsted, and you know, kind of follow their benchmarks. So it's quite a tricky one, really. Have you got any more to say about that, Lou? Because you've
just got more
experience of it.
Well, I've never actually gone through Ofsted regulation. I've got
registration.
I haven't gone through the registration myself, actually, because most of the forest school programs I've worked with were either with older children, as in over 8-year-olds, or were already part of an existing school that would have already had, you know, the Ofsted registration, so it fell under that existing registration. So I guess this is kind of key for people who are setting up independent new businesses with under 8-year-olds, which we are now seeing. It's brilliant. We are seeing now, you know, lots of new forest kindergartens or nature nurseries, which, you know, are providing childcare, you know, all year round and outside, which is brilliant. You know, it's perhaps fitting more into that Scandinavian model of forest school. And so, you know, the people who are doing that in particular are going to need to consider Ofsted registration. From some of the forest schools around here that I've seen, it seems that people do approach it differently depending on their business model, just as you say. So if they are, you know, existing early years practitioners, and they know, they've worked in early years for ages, they know what they're doing, and they have got the business plan, as in it's going to be a forest kindergarten or a nature nursery or an outdoor forest school for early years provision, and they're setting up as a setting, an early years setting, they go for Ofsted straight off the bat, because they've already got that experience and that knowledge. Whereas when I've seen forest school businesses where perhaps they're working with a multitude of different client groups, you know, so they might be doing stuff with a youth group, you know, a teenage kind of client group. They might be doing stuff with the home ed communities, you know, they've got a more varied range. I've noticed some of them might start with early years age groups. They might start with doing, for example, stay and plays where the parents stay, so that is one of the Ofsted exemptions. So they kind of are testing the water, I guess, to see if there's an audience, if they are then going to register in the future and become a full-on, you know, unaccompanied childcare setting. So yeah, it does vary. It depends on the business plan and how well you know your community base that are going to be your audience, I think, as to whether you do it straight away or, you know, you see what the interest is first.
Yeah,
that would be my thinking.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's an interesting one because forest school often kind of falls between certain cracks. And I think that's the case with Ofsted a little bit, because we with my provision and both my business and through the local authority, the local authority one was always with a school, and it was always 5 and above, age 5 and above. So the majority of the time there was no need for Ofsted registration with them, but we did have a homeschool group which we ran, but that was a stay and play, because we were testing to see whether you know, kind of the homeschool groups would bite, and we'd have a group, but also whether we could deliver to that and keep our kind of local authority rules and structure that we had to have behind us, which can hamper your delivery a little bit, makes it slightly less free. So, but it worked okay. For my private business, we didn't, because again the majority of the stuff was with school groups, and we didn't do any weekend sessions. although they can be quite rewarding. Doing kind of an all-day Saturday session can be quite rewarding, both financially and kind of from a forest school leader point of view, watching people grow and change.
And I guess in terms of if people are looking to register as Ofsted or wanting to know whether they need to register, I guess the definitive guidance would be to go to Ofsted's website and the government's website and look at because all the documents are there and you can download them and you can kind of look through the requirements there. And obviously it's important to point out that this is for the UK as well. So if people are listening from other countries, presumably they would have their own versions of Ofsted or some overseeing body that monitors the quality of early years and education experiences. So I don't know anything outside of the UK, I'm afraid. So, but if you are elsewhere in the country or in other countries, then look for your own guidance from your authorities. Nick's got one more question from Nic, and that was, what do you feel are the most cost-effective advertising methods to gain more customers?
Oh, blimey. Definitely difficult questions from Nic. Okay, cost-effective.
You see, I'd leap in there and just go, word of mouth is always
it's got to be
always the best.
Yeah, it's got to be no cost to it, and you don't have to do the work.
Yeah,
other people are going to do it for you. Getting people to do that word of mouth can be a little bit of a push.
Well, also, I guess if you're first starting up, you haven't got the word of mouth thing. So maybe if Nick's first starting up, then you haven't got it. But I guess the trick is once you get going, you get that word of mouth and you get people to spread the love of the forest school out there. But I guess when you're first starting,
I think this is more of a marketing thought than kind of spreading the word. I think making sure that kind of what you do looks professional on the outside, but you're building relationships. Everything that you're doing is building relationships and growing your forest school. You're growing those relationships with people, and that's how you get sales. So this isn't like the hard sell that you see in other places. Car sales rooms, for example, they're still building a relationship with their customer. We're building a relationship about the quality of what we give, and there can be a desire to give as much information about what we do as possible. So the desire is when somebody comes to you and they're interested in what you're doing, you want to tell them everything about it. You want to tell them how wonderful it is and how much it costs and how we do it and how we put it together and all that kind of stuff. And actually, that might be counterproductive because you're not building a relationship with that person. You're just telling them what you do. And with the best will and with the best of intentions, I tell you this, Nic, it's not about you. It's about them. So to build that relationship, it's more about listening than it is about telling. Listen and find out what they want, and then tell them how much it's going to cost. Get permission from them to do that. Now, I'm going to listen to what you're going to tell me. What is it that you're actually wanting? And if that fits with what you want from your forest school business, if it fits with your 6 principles, if you can find a way to make that work within what you deliver, then you can build that relationship with those people and say, yes, we can do that, we can do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, and we can do all that for this price. What happens if you just give them all of that information that you do as your forest school business? What they'll do is they go, oh, thank you very much for that, and they'll go and find somebody cheaper because there's no relationship between you and them. So the most cost-effective marketing strategy, rather than advertising, marketing strategy is to build relationships. And those people you build with, as you grow your forest school and you grow those relationships, are more likely to grow with you than somebody that comes along and you've sold something in a cold sale to. They might come along for one lot of sessions. This might mean that you get to a position where you feel like you want to give stuff away free or give discounts and things like that. And there's a danger in that as well as a value to that. So be careful that you don't undervalue what you do. Be confident in what you say. Be confident in how you say it. One of my hobbies, I do all sorts of crafts and I sell those crafts. And one of the problems that I have with those crafts is I'm always slightly nervous about how people view them. I look at them and I think they're good quality. Other people tell me that they're good quality. But when I'm selling them to people, I spent a long time saying, oh yeah, that's £5. Yeah, that's £50. And I'm saying it with an apology, an inherent apology that it's £50. It's £50. That is, it's kind of the confidence of this is this. It's made of this. It's made this way. It's me that made it. It's special. There's not another one like it, and it's £50. And they go, oh yeah, I'll have one of them. No apologies on your pricing, but it's one of them. They were the two most important things that I learned when I was selling forest school to schools. Not to make an apology about the price. Schools will always push you to be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. You have to draw a line in the sand and say, that is what I'm prepared to do. And you may have to be prepared to walk away, or you may have to be able to say, that's not forest school, but I can do that for you. Now, obviously, the closer you get to forest school, because I'm from the Forest School Association, the better. The better the quality of the forest school that you give. But all outdoor education is of enormous value. So, it might not be forest school, but it might be something else. Word of mouth is important. Social media can work for you. Removing barriers is the other thing. So if there's an easy way for people to contact you and build that relationship, you want to make that as easy as possible within reason. You don't want to kill yourself communicating with people that don't come and sell, that don't come and buy what you're offering. So you've got to be careful of time wasters and people that want all that information to take away and go and start their own business or go and do their own thing or go and buy somebody cheaper. So, kind of watch for the vacuums. But at the same time, you want that freedom of communication with you so you can build the relationships and make nice, strong relationships. Advertising wise, I've tried leaflets, I've tried pamphlets. They are useful in closing a deal or closing a sale. They're useful in bringing people to you, but again, too much information, not enough relationship. Social media, great way to spread word of mouth, especially if people jump on it with you and they do the selling. Even better if they do the selling. We came to your session last week. It was amazing. We rolled around in the mud and had loads of fun, and came away. And my son, daughter, granny has been talking about it ever since. That kind of stuff, that's going to work for you. I hope that's helpful, Nick. I feel like I've sidestepped some of that in like a bizarre forest school matrixy kind of thing.
Yes, so it's an interesting point, isn't it? The whole marketing thing, because often people come to forest school because they want to do groovy, meaningful stuff with groups out in nature. And sometimes the world of advertising and marketing is a very different beast to being all groovy and connected in nature. And so I bet it's an area that many people might struggle with in terms of, having that confidence, as you say, this is what our program costs, and putting it out there and recognizing the value of it. But as you said, the building relationships, as forest school leaders, that's basically our job, isn't it? To build relationships with the people that we're working with. So if we can take that approach and apply it to also building the relationships with whoever's paying for the program, then that's the forest schoolsy way of approaching marketing in a way.
And you've got the other thing about marketing is that a lot of the time this thing about the apologetic approach to pricing is because you're not confident in your pricing. So you need to be confident in your pricing, but you also need to know why you're pricing at that point. You don't have to explain it to everybody else. You probably should never explain it to anybody else, probably. But you have to be confident that it is the right price for you. And if they can't afford it, well, that's sad. You might be able to do something different for them, but there's no point in running a business where you're making a loss. Your price point has to be right, and you have to be confident in that price point. And that will mean that you're confident in your marketing, because that's your foundation. Your price point is your foundation. Everything above that, the price point is your roots. Everything above that is trunk and leaves. That's where you grow.
As we're talking now about kind of price points, I'm just going to leap in because there was another set of questions from Neve. And one of the things she was asking about is like how much to charge for a block of 6 weeks. Like how much do you charge?
Wow. Okay. So really difficult to answer that question because I don't know the makeup or structure or anything of your business. And even if I did, I don't know what you want to earn. So it's difficult for me to give you a price out of the air. In chapter 7 in the book, we go into finances a bit and financial management a bit, and that includes price point. But price point isn't a thing that you just pull out of the air. You have to work out how much to charge. And pulling a price out of the air can lead you into all sorts of problems, and it's not really a sustainable practice. The first thing that you would need to work out is your survival budget, what you need to live on, what money you need to make it viable for you. And then once you've worked that out, you can work out what you need to run your business. So your income, your outgoings, so you can create something called a cash flow forecast from that. And your cash flow forecast will help you create a sustainable business where you can see how much is coming in, how much is going out, and what financial problems might be coming along the way. Cash flows, 90% of businesses collapse because of cash flow. So it's really important to get your the idea of cash flow forecasting happening from the outset of your business. It will let you know months in advance, potentially, when there's a problem coming, and you'll be able to do something about it in advance, hopefully. Obviously, if there's if you get a surprise expenditure which is bigger than your current cash on hand, you can't do much about that. But what it can do is if you've got a gradually dwindling source of money, and then it rises again, it gradually dwindles to a slightly lower point the next time, and it rises again as you get paid, and it dwindles again to a slightly lower point. It will pick that up, and it will let you know that your price point or something isn't working for your business. And then you can use, in the book, I outline 10 steps to enable you to look at your cash flow and try and work out what it is within that cash flow that isn't working for your business. And that might be your price point. You might be too cheap. You might be not running enough sessions. You might not have enough people on your sessions. So it will help you look at that. And there's also ways of linking that to your marketing and linking that to your advertising. So you might find that giving a 10% discount to fill up a particular group to maximum capacity actually makes that group more viable than if you had half a group without that 10% discount. So you can use that 10% discount with your marketing to say, "Wait, come to this, it's 10% off this term, you know, come to me," bring people in. Then you start creating that relationship with them. But you'd need to play that through on a cash flow. And cash flow is one of these things that if you set it up so it's automatic, you can change certain figures within it and you can see the effect of those real time. It's really, really important. So survival budget, expenditure, cash flow, 3 of the most important things in order to help you create your price point. And it also depends on how your business is structured, because limited companies pay different amounts of tax and they work in a different way to sole traders, to CICs, to partnerships. So all of that needs to be kind of put into place and understood before you reach your price point at the end. Because if you're in a partnership, you need to make sure that your partner and yourself are earning what you need. So, you know, different thing. So tricky question, but roundabout kind of answer. But chapter 7 in the book.
I've also noticed, which is an important tip, I think, for people, is when people are working all of that out and they're working out, you know, how much, you know, how much time equates to how much money and that kind of thing in it, that people really commonly forget all the other bits and pieces that a forest school leader does. So, you know, if the session's a 3-hour session, they'll think, oh yeah, 3 hours. But actually, when you're working this all out, you need to also include, you know, preparation of resources, the planning, the observations, the evaluations. Otherwise, people do then sometimes fall into the trap of undercharging, because actually a 3-hour session isn't 3 hours of work. It's actually more when you add up all the bits around it, you know, maintaining the kits, you know, sorting this out, sorting that out.
Taking the bookings.
Yeah, taking the bookings, the
Getting
administration.
the money in.
Yeah, it's all adds to it. So yeah I think it's worth remembering that when you're working all of that out as well.
Yeah, and when you start out, a lot of that is going to be kind of estimates. And then as you work it out, you'll be able to go, okay, so a typical booking will take me 10 minutes to put through the system, or do I do it myself, or do I go on an online booking system? And then you have to work out whether the cost of the online booking system is better than the cost in your time. You know, kind of A, for your customers, because it keeps your prices lower, but also for you, because not only is there a finite amount of money that's going to come in from your sessions, but there's a finite amount of energy that you've got. You can't be a forest school leader 24 hours a day. You've got to sleep at some point. And you've got to
really
eat. Yeah, yeah.
Surely you do forest school in your sleep, don't you?
You can't. You just can't. You can't do it. No. So you've got to work that out as well. You've got to work out how much energy you can expend as a person before it's detrimental to you or your family or to whatever. And you have to put that in. And if you do that and you work out you can run 3 sessions a week, then you need to price those sessions accordingly to get what you need from those sessions. A lot of the problem with price point is that people will look at somebody else and go, oh, them down the road, they're charging £6 per child per session. Who's to say they're doing it right? Who's to say that that's sustainable for them? Who's to say that they haven't got some other form of income? Maybe they're doing it as a bit of a hobby, really, and just having a trickle income from it. Maybe they're not making money at all. You know, so you can't base that on somebody else's practice. You have to work it out for yourself. And when you do that, that's when you'll be able to work out whether you can make money out of it. The book will help with that.
It's a worthwhile investment.
$29.99, and you know, kind of well worthwhile investment. And you can even, I think you can even offset it for tax. So as a legitimate expense, which is another point. You know, legitimate expenses are something to look into when you're looking at your price point and taxation, and working out what taxes you're going to be paying next year if you're a sole trader, and what withdrawals you're going to make. And that it's complicated, but we deal with it. We deal with it a little bit in the book.
So still on the theme of sort of money and tax and things, Neve also asks about staffing and volunteers and how to, I guess, employ people. She's asking, is it best to hire other forest school leaders and pay them as consultants? I'm assuming here she means, like, you know, other sole traders sort of people, who would then have to sort out their own taxes, or to employ people, you know, yourself within the business. I think that's what she's asking.
Now, I've done both within the local authority. I've employed people on a freelance basis, and I've also kind of employed people through my company. It depends on how you're set up, and it depends what you want from those people. So if you employ somebody through your company and you're paying them a wage, you can expect them to do all the bits of extraneous stuff as well, assuming that you're paying them for that. If you're paying a freelancer to come in and support your sessions, you might only be paying them for the 3 hours that they're there, but they're not going to help you do the follow-up, the evaluation, the bookings, and so on and so forth. So it depends how your business is set up, and it also depends ethically how you stand, and also whether it works for that person. So if you've got a person in mind and it works for them to be freelance, because it might do, they might want to control what they do and have a greater control over the money that comes in and the taxes that they pay out. You need to reflect on a few things. One of them is kind of what employment means in your company, in your country. So you can employ a freelance leader or contract a freelance leader to do a job or a service, but there is a grey area around where that becomes employment somewhat. So you need to tread carefully around that line. The other side of things is that if you're providing a quality service and you're just buying in a freelancer and they're looking after all their own interests, where do you stand on training? So CPD and reflection with that leader. Are you expecting them to train themselves? What happens if they need a piece of training that you need in order to progress your sessions? Do they pay for it? Do you pay for it? So it becomes complicated quickly. Both ways work. Both ways work. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can say which way is best, but both ways can work. And lots of forest schools do employ forest school freelance forest school assistants or leaders to help with the business owner's delivery. If you're running a company, you might find that when you get to a level where you're running a company, that you are bringing in leaders that are running, and you're running the company. So you might be in charge of the company, but they're doing the delivery. And that might be the case in the CIC, because there's a lot more stuff behind the scenes running a company and a CIC than there is running a sole trader business. So yeah, it's complicated, but there is stuff there to help you reflect on those business structures and reflect on kind of finding the right staff as well. So if you're paying a freelancer, there's positives and negatives to that. The positive is that if you don't like them and they don't work with your style, they don't work with what you believe in, you can easily get rid of them. Now, you'd want to be doing that in an ethical way, because word of mouth advertising works both ways. If you upset people, that leader will be going away saying, I wouldn't go to them. They're not a good employer. It reflects on you. So word of mouth is powerful in both directions. I suppose it's kind of from another point of view, it's the quality of the relationship between you and the person that you're buying in to support you is important to the quality product that you give out at the end of the day. So if you're literally buying somebody in to come in and support you running the sessions, that's probably all they're going to do for their money, unless they're beautiful people, which lots of forest school people are beautiful people and they go above and beyond. But you can't expect them to do that, and morally you shouldn't expect them to do that, to give time that they're not paid for. So yeah, another one, but I can't give you a straight answer for. It depends. So I hope that's useful, Neve. So
it's one more from Neve, which
okay.
I think actually will be a relatively more simple one. We'll finish on the simple one. She's asking basically the ratios question about how many adults to children, which I will just say I have done a little video answering this question, because it is a common one that gets asked a lot, which I will put a link in the description below for that one as well. But Nic, your take on the ratios question: how many adults to children?
Tricky one. Because it depends.
It does depend.
It depends on, kind of, is there any such thing as a typical participant? If you've got participants that are needing more support or less support, then your ratios have to change to encompass that, to enable you to give quality provision to those people. You might have to bring in extra leaders to help. You might have to have, if you're working with a school, those children might need a one-to-one. They might need more support from the school, or you might need to provide that extra support. So it's really difficult to say what those ratios should be. What I'd suggest that you reflect on, though, is that your ratio is directly related to the quality of what you put out. So if you have lots and lots of children and your sessions, there's less interaction with you as an adult, and that might be fine for later sessions, but there's also potentially less opportunities for them to learn certain things. Obviously, there's more for social interaction if there's more kids there or more participants there. So it's a balance. You've also got to reflect on safety. So how many participants can you safely look after or support within your site? If it's a site next to a river which runs quite fast, you might need to lower that number down. If it's a site where it's contained and once you go through the gate, the gate's locked and the children can't get out, then the ratios might get up, but you might lose your freedom because of that, and you might lose a degree of quality and connection with that. So it's a balancing thing. But think about your safety. Also, the size of your site. So, you know, if you've got a site where 10 children can spend some time in a space by themselves, dotted all over your site, where you can kind of keep an eye on everybody, but they've got enough room to be themselves in that space, then that's great. But if your site's too small for that, then obviously you can't have 10 kids doing that. You certainly couldn't put 30 kids in there and expect them to do that. So it comes down to the size of your site. And then, of course, it comes down to pricing, because you've got to work out how many kids you can have on your session to make it financially viable for you to run that session. And on top of that, you've got probably all the stuff that Lou's got in that video about the kind of the ethos and pedagogical leanings of Forest School towards ratios, because obviously we always say that there should be a high ratio of kids to leaders or participants to leaders, so we can provide as much support and opportunity for growth and learning as is possible within those settings. So I guess ratio wise, it's as low as possible to allow that to happen. There's also kind of there's also legislation, isn't there, on the number of certain age children that should be out with an adult.
I believe, as I understand it, that different local authorities will give different guidance.
And different countries will have different rules. So
yes. So that's worth being aware of, whatever the guidance is in your local area.
and also what your insurance covers. Because your insurance company may stipulate how many children you can take and what the cutoff point is, to safely look after those children. And it will depend as well on whether you're a sole trader and whether you're a company, as to whether you want to take that risk. Because if you're a sole trader and something goes wrong, you can lose your house, your car, your money, your livelihood, everything. Whereas if you're in a company, you're somewhat protected by that. Obviously, you know, kind of there's still the legal aspect of it and negligence and all that kind of stuff that would come into play with any kind of business. But you are financially protected in a way if you are in a company, more than you would be if you're a sole trader or a partner. And actually, as a partner, you're responsible for your other partner's activities. So if you're in a partnership, even if you're not there and a partner does something and something goes wrong, you are financially liable for their losses as well as your own. So worth bearing in mind before you get into partnership. And you can there's ways of making sure that you get the right level of partnership and the right level of earning and the right percentage of kind of liability within a partnership. But well worth looking into and making sure that legally you've got it nailed down before you start trading.
It's an important life lesson, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Be mindful who you enter partnerships with.
Oh yeah.
I like how we've come full circle with those questions from our community there. You know, we started with the legal forms question and we came back to it at the end as well. So I
can't help it, it's my chapter.
It's all come around.
I mean, there's 14 chapters in the book, and they all deal with a different topic. So we start with looking at what Forest School and what it isn't. We move on to a really deep dive into the ethos and pedagogy and how that works with the participants and why we do the 6 principles together. And I think there's a hint there of like, for me, reading through it, there's a hint that there's almost like a seventh invisible principle that gets created when you do the six together. It's like sort of like an over principle that kind of comes about. I think that there's a hint in there, and it's an idea that's forming in my head. Then we look at the benefits in depth, and then we look at the responsibilities of the forest school leader. Now, I use the word leader. Other people use the word practitioner. The reason why I chose the word leader is because of all this extraneous stuff that we do as forest school leaders, the business stuff, the land management stuff, and all that kind of stuff. Leader to me is a much stronger term because of that, because of a leader will take into account all of these other things, whereas a practitioner may be somebody that's just delivering sessions. Then we look at the options of how you can get forest school. Then we look at how you can put together a forest school business or a forest school project in a school. Then we look at sites and land use. And then after that, we look at site management, the equipment you need. We even look, oh, you'll be excited about this one, Luke. We look at power paper, policies, and paperwork. So, but an important point is that those are the things that, although they might tie you down initially in creating them, and they're a bit of a headache to do, and you've got to think for the future, they're the things that give you freedom. If your power paper is proper, lots of things, power paper is good, and you're confident in it, you'll have the confidence to allow your learners or participants to expand their boundaries as you expand yours. If you're not confident in what's behind you in your foundation, you're going to be reluctant to let people take risks. And you're not going to take risks because of that. And if you're not taking risks and they're not taking risks, you're missing a principle. Because risk is important. It's so important. So important. Yeah. And then we've got something that helps you with your kit. And then finally that planting a seed for the future. Mm-hmm. And if you buy in the first 1,000 copies, you even get a free poster that goes with it that you can put up in your school, or you could laminate it and you can put it up at your forest school site, which say why we do those 6 principles, the things that our participants get from them. I think it's really useful. And it's a great way of explaining to parents and other teachers in your establishment what forest school is all about. And you know, going back to Nick's question on advertising and marketing, it's a lovely poster you can put on your wall. It does an important job, but it's got our contact details at the bottom.
Like some Jedi mind trick.
Yeah. So branding is important.
Yeah. So how do people get hold of a copy of the book, Nick?
Oh yeah, that's an important one, isn't it? And thankfully, it's an easy question to finish on. So you can go to our website at www.forestschoolassociation.org. And there is a link on the homepage that you can click on, which will take you straight to book sales, or you can do www.forestschoolassociation.org/book-sales, and that will take you straight there. Or you can go to our Facebook page and click on the link on our Facebook page, or our LinkedIn, or our Instagram, or our Twitter, in fact.
Ooh. And we'll put all the links in the description below if you're watching this on the video, so Fantastic. That you can go automatically there.
And do you know what? I'd like to offer your viewers a discount.
Woo! Yes, please. So we like a discount.
We, if you can put the discount code below, I think we can give them a 10% discount if they buy their book after watching your video.
Your video.
The discount code.
Lovely. We I think that's our first ever discount that we've got on this channel.
Hey, first person on, and I'm giving you discounts already.
Hey. Amazing.
This has been really fun, and it's been a really nice exercise for me, having kind of edited the book and pulled it all together, to kind of go through what we've got there. I hadn't, when I started looking at it for this, I was thinking, we've got so much stuff in there that's so useful. And you kind of get, when you work something that big, you can get a little bit blind to the fact that there's so much good stuff in there. I've read the book 30 times. I'm still not bored with it.
I'm yet to read it. I'm yet to get my copy of the thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing it and hearing all the other chapters. Because I'm not sure if you mentioned earlier, but each chapter's been written by a different author, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, they are
all together.
Every chapter's been written by different people, and that means that of those like massively experienced and knowledgeable people, you're getting topics that they feel particularly passionate about. So you get the best of all of them. What more can you want? The best of 11 people.
The cream of Forest School, I was about to say. maybe that's not the best visual image.
I couldn't say that because I'm one of the authors.
I wonder what a Forest School cream would be like. I expect it would be green.
It would definitely be green, and it would probably grow by itself. It's more like a slime mold, I think.
The slime mold of Forest School. That's what you should have as your banner to sell this.
I'm not sure whether that's a personal statement or.
I feel on this happy note, can I ask you one last question before you go, which is a question that if I interview anybody else in the future, I would like this to be like a standard question.
Oh, okay.
Could you tell us like one of your most powerful experiences in nature?
Powerful experience in nature.
Yeah, like one of your favorite nature connected experiences.
Oh, gosh, there's so many. There is so many. I mean, I worked in parks for 23 years. I think some of my most powerful connections have come through other people. So watching them connect with nature, because my role was to help people connect with nature. So I'm trying to put them to one side. They're all clamoring to be spoken, and I'm trying to put them all to one side. I had an experience, and I don't know how you feel about zoos, but I had an experience where I was lucky enough to work with a really good zoo that does loads of good conservation work, and I was observing orangutan, and I've always loved orangutan, and I was sat having my lunch, just watching where they were wandering about and doing their orangutan things, and I was sitting there. It was a warm day. I had a hat on, and I was just sitting there eating my sandwiches. And this massive male orangutan came down and sat with me while I ate my lunch. I was sat there and kind of open palms outwards, so I wasn't showing any kind of threat, and I didn't look at him directly or anything. So I'm kind of clocking him out the corner of my eye, and he's sitting there and he's watching me, and he picks up a leaf and he puts it on the top of his head, and he's watching me a bit more, and as I moved, he moved. And then I was eating and he was picking stuff up, and and he was playing. You know, it wasn't. It wasn't. I didn't see it as mimicry or anything like that. He was playing. He'd sat down while I was having my lunch, and he was playing with me. And I just got this connection with this orangutan, and it was mind blowing. And I kind of moved a bit closer and sat on the other side, so I could observe him a little bit more, but without being threatening. And we sat there. It must have been about 20 minutes. Sat there connecting with this creature, and I wished it could have been in the wild rather than in a zoo. But at the same time, such a powerful feeling of connection with this one wonderful creature. And then I've got one of the sites that I worked on was 100 acres of 115 acres of ancient woodland and river. And I'd taken myself off one day in the little buggy I had to drive around the site to move my tools from one place to another. And it broke down. And for about 10 minutes, I was very frustrated because I was in the middle of a river valley. I knew nobody was going to be able to get it out. And it would have to be fixed in situ. And the guy said, oh, it's going to be at least a couple of hours before we can get to you. And of course, I couldn't leave it. I couldn't leave the buggy where it was. So all I could do was sit in the woods for 2 hours in absolute bliss, because nobody was there. Nobody came past, no dog walkers, no nothing. And I sat on the log in amongst all these trees with these beautiful bluebells stretching all the way down this slope that I was sat on, and just listened to the world for 2 hours. It was cool enough that it wasn't uncomfortable, and I could hear the insects. I could hear a stream at the bottom babbling away. Oh, it was absolutely idyllic. And I think probably I left a part of my soul at that point, sitting on that log, listening to the world around me, and just being in that moment for 2 hours, and having the excuse to be there, to not be able to do anything for 2 hours. And this was before mobile phones, so I thankfully couldn't take out a mobile phone and kind of play Snake or whatever it was at that moment in time. Showing me age now. But yeah, that was wonderful. Oh, and then, yeah, the other one was I went to Finland. I don't know whether you've been to Finland. Beautiful place. I was going to talk at a university, at Hampus University in Finland, and they took me out on a day trip to this wonderful park, and we walked up the hill, and there's this big tower with like hundreds of steps. I'm terrified of heights. So there's hundreds of steps, and I couldn't get to the top. So they all went up the tower, and I stayed, and I wandered off from where the people were, because there was a few people milling about, and I just wanted to spend a bit of time in kind of the natural environment there, because I've been planes and trains and universities and everything. And I wandered off, and there was a viewpoint, and it literally stuck out from some trees and looked across lakes and forest for as far as I could see. And it was just stunning, and it nearly brought me to tears. It was just one of those moments where you can feel the world around you filling you down to your boots, down to your roots, let's say, down to your roots. And yeah, that was such an amazing feeling, just looking out across this vast expanse of forest and lakes and just beauty. And it was a beautiful day as well. Little white clouds scudding across, smells from because it was a pine forest, but it wasn't a commercially planted one. So there was red squirrels hanging out in the trees and throwing bits of stuff down at me, and and you could smell the pine and all those beautiful phyton sides that were really helping me relax and come down and start to really kind of take in the environment. I could smell the earth beneath my feet, and it's just, yeah. Yeah. One of them takes me straight back there. As soon as I imagine it, I'm back on that thing. And I think that that's a really important thing with nature connection, isn't it? That it connects you not just for that moment, but it can connect you to that place for the rest of your life. And I can take myself there if I'm super stressed, or things aren't going right, or I'm chasing authors for chapters. I can take myself to Finland, to that place, or to the zoo with that orangutan, and feel that connection. And I can recall that and pull it back into myself and just be for a little bit.
And some powerful lessons there. The power of play with the orangutan.
Yeah.
And the importance of having permission to sit in nature, because you're almost forced to there with your buggy breaking down. Yet, being in nature is as essential as eating and breathing, in my opinion, and a lot of the research is also suggesting that now. Yet we feel that we have to have permission to go and do it. We need to give ourselves permission to go do it.
Yeah. I mean, we are nature, and nature is us.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to have to do another interview, Nic, just on this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. It is fascinating.
And hopefully, through Quality Forest School, through maybe the book supporting people get more forest school programs off the ground, we're going to help people of all ages to have these similar experiences in nature, and have those memories that they could draw on, as you say, even when the world gets stressful, have those multi-sensory memories that we can go back to if we need them, and the world would be a groovier place.
And if that's the legacy of the book, wow, what a legacy. If we can convince one school to build Forest School, then that's a value far beyond the words that are in that book. If we can do 10 schools, imagine that, 100 schools, 1,000 schools, every child in the country having access to nature connection. How fabulous would that be? Every single one of those kids having that moment they can go back to, de-stress, reconnect with. What a wonderful place that would be if every child had that. That's going to be my drive from this moment forwards. Quality Forest School for everybody. Quality nature connection for everybody.
Yeah. Well, in our lives, we're all pebbles in the pond, like we throw our magic pebbles into the pond and the ripples go out, and we never know where they're going to end up, what shores those ripples might wash up on, so we just throw the groovy stuff out there.
Or who else is throwing the pebbles?
Well, exactly.
Reach out, speak to people, join in, create a community.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to all throw pebbles. Let's make waves. Let's make a big wave of Forest School.
Fantastic.
And wash over the world. A big thank you, Nic. This has been a very rich conversation about we've gone from legal structures to slime molds to chapters in the book, to all sorts of things. So it's been lovely spending time chatting with you this afternoon, and thank you for answering some of our community's questions there. I hope that's given our viewers some food for thought about their forest school programs and businesses. And big thank you to you, Nic, and to the FSA for spreading the grooviness of Forest School and being a place for community and for the grassroots movement.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to come and chat and shamelessly promote the book, but also to chat to wider communities that, you know, I haven't maybe reached yet. But yeah, do you know, if people can come along to our webinars, if they can reach out to us, join us as members. There's lots of different membership types. So if you're not delivering at the moment, there's trainee membership types, and there's affiliate membership types where you're paying less amount. It's not much a year, and you get lots from it. And you've got the backing of a professional body then for what you're doing.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Groovy Forest School. Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed that deep dive into growing a forest school. We always love hearing from you, so do let us know what you found useful in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, do give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel so you can join us again in the woods, or on Zoom in this case, next time. And thanks for watching. Our first conversation with the lovely Nic. Growing a forest school from the roots up is the trick. He showed us his book to give us a tease. So get your discounted copy when you next head to the trees.